All right, you are all set.
Okay, welcome tonight to our committee meeting for our Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee. It is Thursday, March 24th, 7 p.m. and introductions. We'll introduce committee members, and as I call your name, just wave at the camera for us. Steve Williams, Tim West, Andy Crump,
Hello.
Karen Morey,
Present.
and do we have Brent? Brent was here. We'll go to Ken Worcester. Are you there? Can you hear us, Ken?
Oh, Brent's coming back.
All right. Well, we'll give it just a second here. Brent, you with us again?
Yep, hit the wrong button.
That's all right. And then Ken, if you could say hi, just so we know you can hear us. Joey, you with us? You want to wave at the camera for us?
Yep, I'm here.
Perfect. And we're going to assume, and Ken's on, so we'll count him in the roll, and we'll assume that that he can hear us. So you all got the minutes attached to the calendar invite tonight. Justin, thank you very much. That was we've discussed over time where those can be found, but it's really nice when they're attached there too. So thank you. That's very helpful. Any questions or discussion on the minutes or any motion to approve?
Motion to approve. Andy.
Troy, just a couple before we approve, there's a couple of clarifications in there that I noted.
Steve, hang on 1 second, because we've got a motion. We need a second before we discuss, and then I'll come right to you.
All right.
Okay, this is Karen. I second.
All
And
right.
also please remember when you make a motion to give your names for the minutes.
Yeah, we did that. So Andy with the motion, Karen with the second. Steve, you've got comment.
A couple of them there, they're small, but Andy probably doesn't want to be known as any Crump. They're in number 2 under the mitigation funding for Clackamas Park. And then near the end, I had one clarification under member reports. It was Karen's member report where it indicated that the city commission had asked PRAC to return with an ordinance to put PRAC into the city code. And I wanted to be sure that that the commission was asking PRAC to develop the ordinance. Is that what we meant to say?
Where are you finding that one piece right there, Steve?
I'm looking under member reports on the last page.
Okay. Comment PRAC bylaws report.
It was
Okay, and Steve, that was my understanding the night of that meeting.
okay.
I had since found out that that was incorrect. Hopefully that's something we can have corrected tonight under either staff reports or maybe before Jacob leaves. Because
Okay.
I believe that the city management is going to take care of that.
Yeah, I
But
assumed.
it's still accurate in the minutes from what I said.
Okay. I'm good with that then. Thank you.
So Justin, did you catch that misspelling piece?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Perfect. Any other comments or discussion for the minutes before we poll? Okay, you want to poll, Justin?
Yeah, Andy Crump,
Aye.
Brent Haverkamp,
Aye.
Joey Knopf,
Aye.
Tim West,
Yep.
Karen Morey, Ken Worcester,
Aye.
Troy Bollinger,
Aye.
and Steve Williams.
Aye.
Motion passed.
Okay, do we have any public comment, Justin?
No, we do not.
Okay, so moving on to presentations for general business, just a reminder that this is a public meeting and we do have an agenda. So as we have these discussions and as certain people are here, we need to make sure that we're sticking to the agenda with our questions and comments, because it's fair to the public that if they want to participate or hear, they have an opportunity to do so, and for us to add things to the agenda would not be appropriate because it would be cutting out the opportunity to do that. So first item under general business is Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee training presentation. So Jacob, we're going to turn that over to you and you've got the floor.
Right. So I just wanted to start off by thanking you all for having me. I just want to make sure everyone can see me and hear me just fine.
Yep.
Perfect. So I'll go ahead and get the presentation going here. So what I'll be talking about today is the roles and authority of a high-functioning advisory committee. To start off, I'm the city recorder for the city of Oregon City. So I tend to, I manage the city commission's agenda posting. I'm also the records manager for the city. So any kind of public records requests and those things come through my office. I also work with the boards and committees kind of on the outside looking in case, you know, there needs any assistance with that, or also in these sort of orientations. And I also assist with the minutes, getting those on the website and sort of that background stuff. So the presentation today, I'm going to kind of follow through the outline here. The first part's going to be what makes a city committee tick, sort of the nuts and bolts of, you know, what is it? How does it fit in the rest of the city's organization? And what are the sort of fundamental documents? The roles and responsibilities in policy development between like the city commission, staff, advisory committees. And then after that, I'll talk about public meeting laws and meeting management, sort of the more, you know, getting narrower and narrower. How do we actually, you know, do the job? And then the last part is just some reminders about being in a public committee. Sometimes that can get a little bit confusing, especially for new members. And so, because it's a little bit of a brain switch, you know, you're not acting as an individual, really, you're acting as a group. So it's kind of difficult, and it takes sometimes some thought to think, you know, to get through it. So first of all, I wanted to ask, because since I'm not familiar with everybody, is there any brand new members that have never been on a board or committee before? Go ahead and say hi for me.
Yeah, this is Joey Knopf. I'm new to these kinds of roles.
Okay, brand new to, I mean, you never served in any kind of a public capacity in any way?
No.
And we're,
I was in the Navy, if that counts.
yeah, that does count, actually. A little bit more of a hierarchical structure, probably, unless, but you know, everything's a negotiation, right?
That's right.
So is there anybody else that's new, or everybody else has got some experience?
This is actually one of my first times in a public advisory committee, Jacob.
Yeah.
But I've been on here for a little over 2 years, I think now.
Oh, okay. Well, that counts as experience. All right, so let's go move on to the next part. So what makes a city committee tick? So of course, as a public, you know, as a component of the city, everybody's subject to the city charter. So the city charter is adopted by statute from state law, and it kind of sets the ground rules for the city government. It creates the, you know, charter positions like the city manager, and the city recorder is mentioned. There's also, it sets the role for the mayor, and how committees are appointed, and sort of just sets up the general structure for the city. Now, the city code is what the city commission adopts as legislative actions, typically through ordinance. So any kind of ordinance, if it's affecting the city code, will become city code. The other thing that makes boards and committees tick really is the boards and commissions orientation manual. And I'll talk about that a little bit later and give you the link to where you can find that. It's sort of just the guidance policy. If you know, it gets softer and softer as the farther you go down. So the orientation manual is just kind of a guide to being a board and committee in the city of Oregon City. The other guiding document for PRAC is its bylaws. And as you guys already know, the PRAC is not in our city code. It's just right now adopted by resolution, and I went through and found the original motion that created PrAC. I believe it was in the late 80s or early 90s. So it started as a motion, and we've gotten all the way to 2022 without being adopted into the city code. That doesn't make it any less or more legitimate than any other committee. It's just a quirk of Oregon City's PrAC. So the other thing to think about is that PrAC serves at the pleasure of the city commission. So they're sort of the guiding light for the city, and everybody else kind of follows them. So PrAC as a committee, it holds meetings, it approves meeting minutes. PrAC would follow its 1 through 6 of its bylaws, and takes votes on recommendations and suggestions for policies. So that's kind of the main functions, but we'll talk about the specific functions in a little bit. So this is sort of just a big, very noisy diagram I made to sort of represent how, the different groups interact. Like I said, the city commission's kind of up there at the top. They're sort of the pinnacle of local government power here. They appoint and select the city manager, who manages all the departments and all the staff underneath, sort of indirectly through the directors, who are the next level down. The directors and their staff are the ones that directly interact with our advisory committees. So you're one of more than one. TAC is another advisory committee. There's also the Natural Resources Committee and the Citizen Involvement Committee. Each of those kind of have their own little departments attached to them. And they help the staff refine and develop policies that end up going back up to the city commission for final adoption. On the right-hand side there, I kind of have the way those different things interact. And if you notice too, I'm kind of proud of this graphic. The colors in the background show sort of how things start overlapping. So something that's natural resources oriented and also PrAC orient, like within the scope of PrAC and within the scope of natural resources, those interact at the director level. So say there's some kind of, for example, a tree policy in parks, that would end up going through the directors to sort of become a policy eventually adopted. So this is the other part of that role of the advisory committee. They provide citizen oversight and provide the public interest review during that policy development cycle. They help with policy suggestions and recommendations, and they can kind of, feed in new ideas and concepts into it as it's being developed and grown. I kind of have a little circular diagram there on the right-hand side, at least on my screen. So the city commission will adopt the goals for the, that biennium, or and those sort of get refined into projects and policies and new things to do for the city government through the city staff. And then your role as the advisory committee is to take those things that are coming up and sort of refine them and give input, maybe even suggest new aspects that hadn't been originally thought up. And then staff takes those ideas back and gives them, refines them and works on them, and then gives it back to the city commission to say, okay, this is what the work we've done. What do you think? And so in a, smooth transition, everything's nice and happy, and the city commission's proud of the work, that everyone's done. So they really provide a really valuable reconnecting to the community, especially, as members of a special organization dedicated to a certain subject. We have really passionate people, and that's really good because they can have, the best ideas and the most engaged community members. So I have a question here down at the bottom. What do you think the purpose of the Oregon City Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee is? I'll have you go around maybe quickly. You can just raise your hand or just blurt out if you want. Hey, Troy?
I've always thought the role of the committee is to act as a liaison and support the community and deliver what they want and their messages to staff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great idea. You know, bringing those ideas from the community. And I didn't really bring that up, but yeah, this kind of reconnecting that with the community. Sort of on that last slide at the very bottom, it's the community, right? The bottom of that arrow, you know, is connection to the community. So yeah, perfect. So what, Brent, I see your hand up.
I was going to echo what Troy said and also basically be as a liaison and advise and give insight to and work with our Parks and Recreation Director, Kendall, for anything that needs to go to the city and to basically serve the community as well.
Yeah, perfect. How about you, Karen?
I'm going to agree with the community input. I think it begins with the department. They have an idea. We help them gather the information, and then it's up to us to support that program before the commission. Or disagree, ask them to go back to the drawing board. But PrAC is there as an advisory committee to the commission to say, yes, we'd like to see parks move ahead with this.
Mhm. Yeah, and it can also provide that critical, you know, efficiency too, because it's, you know, you never want to go before the city commission and they bring up something like, hey, you guys didn't think of this one thing, and the community's been talking about it. It sort of makes the system more efficient in a way too. How about Steve? What you got?
Well, I certainly agree with what everyone else has said, but at the same time, there's a lot of years of experience on this committee as well. And I think there's a lot of experience that we can provide input and ideas from our other experiences that can be hopefully helpful to both the city and the citizens of Oregon. So it's, you know, giving our experience out there.
Yeah, you know, that's extremely, yeah, it's a great point because, you know, as volunteers, the city commissioners, you know, they aren't experts on everything. And so it's great to have, you know, this body of knowledge, you know, coming in early and providing input on stuff.
Mhm.
All right, Tim, what you got?
Well, I think it's great, everybody's input. I think it's really critical that we listen to the community, but also we have to listen to the city commissioners and what they really intend versus what's real life. It's like, hey, you guys, this isn't going to work, or this is going to work. And I think our community, our committee right here should be part of that sounding board to go ahead and reflect what they want to go ahead and do, besides what the citizens in general want to go ahead and reflect on.
Yeah, that's great. All right, Ken, I think you got your hand up too, right?
Yeah. So I think we should also kind of be a sounding board and interact with some of the other commissions and advisory committees.
Yeah.
I guess an example would be working with the Planning Commission, especially to weigh in on proposed code language that might have an impact on parks.
Yeah, for sure. And you know, the example I thought of too with like tree policies, you know, something like trees in parks would be multiple different, you know, committees. So yeah, it's a good point.
Yeah, I mean, the one that sticks to mind right now is the lighting policy for pathways.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm not sure if the park committee really had an opportunity to weigh in on that. But those are those types of opportunities that I think we should be able to weigh in a little bit.
Yeah. All right, well, if that's the last person, I'll go ahead and move on to the next one. I don't see any more hands. So this is the purpose according to the bylaws, to maintain active communications with the Parks and Recreation Director and other relevant city staff, to provide recommendations to the City Commission relative to the Parks and Recreation, of course, solicit citizen input opinions relative to Parks and Recreation, request information from and consult with service organizations and special interest groups, neighborhood associations and other professionals as appropriate, oversee the implementation of Parks and Recreation Master Plan through periodic reviews, updates, and recommend revisions, and provide public meeting time for citizen input. So all of these things are what's listed in the bylaws for the organization or for PrAC. These are probably going to be what look a lot like the ones that end up in the city code for your ordinance that is in the works. I think I'd jump in on that a little bit earlier. My recollection from the city commission is that it would come through staff. So that was my moment of remembering. So the next thing I wanted to talk about was public meeting laws. And so this can kind of get a little sticky sometimes. You have to have public notice for all meetings. Earlier, Troy mentioned about talking about something that wasn't necessarily on the agenda, right? So you would want to have a notice for everything that you plan to talk about. There is in Oregon law a little bit of a caveat that you can talk about something that isn't on the agenda, but that's come up in the interim or something like that. Maybe there wasn't enough time to provide notice. It was something that happened yesterday. So there is a little bit of a wiggle room there, but generally is a good policy. Yeah, you want to make sure everybody knows what you're going to talk about so they can come and provide public comment if it's coming up. Public meetings have to be open to the public. There's been lots of changes from in this area after the pandemic started. Originally, you had to provide a public platform, public area if you were having a remote meeting like we're having right now, for people to come and actually watch the meeting. But the recent changes have become permanent, and so virtual meetings are just fine, like we're doing now. And they have to, generally have ADA accessible areas, that kind of thing. In history, City Hall was used for PrAC meetings, and of course it's accessible for the public. One of the other main requirements is minutes have to be created for each meeting. There's lots of, they don't need to be verbatim. They can also be just a summary of things that were discussed and the actions that were taken. Votes have to usually be recorded. Well, they have to be recorded, but yeah, so those are the kind of the overarching rules for public bodies, and even advisory committees are looped into that. The other one I wanted to bring up that's sort of an interesting one in Oregon is the email meetings. So there's some case law in Oregon that if a committee, say, emails each other and they all sequentially decide on something, that counts as a serial meeting. And so that's why Justin and Kendall are really careful about not making sure that everybody doesn't email each other, because that could accidentally get us in trouble with our public meeting law. So generally we tell everyone to make sure you channel all your communications through your liaison. So if you want to say, hey, I want PrAC to know about this cool event that's happening next week, can you relay that to them? That prevents a meeting issue, because say if one of the members was to email it directly to everyone and then everyone replies back to saying, oh yeah, we all should be there, you've accidentally voted on attending this event. So you don't want to do that. Even if it seems like, oh, that doesn't really seem like we're voting, the Oregon courts are a little picky about that. So steer clear of it. Just don't do it. It's easier that way.
Jacob, are you open for a question about that at this time?
Sure.
So a little while back, a few months ago, I had emailed everybody on the committee about an opportunity to have one representative. And so I emailed and said, here's the details. Is there anyone that's interested?
Mhm.
And then individually people responded and said, yes, I am, or no, I'm not. But it wasn't, we all need to be there. Should we agree? It was just, hey, we're requesting one representative who's available.
Mhm.
Does that fall into what you're saying to be careful of, or is that okay? Because it's not a consensus of what do we do or what we don't do?
I would, since it's just sort of like polling availability, I wouldn't really get too concerned about it, but I would definitely just steer clear of it and don't try to change, just put everything through Justin or Kendall and let them sort of coordinate and be that central point so that we avoid any kind of serial meetings. Because really the danger is having a quorum on an email that nobody could attend. Otherwise, you basically, I'm not sure how this would go, but I guess you'd have to CC the universe to have everyone attend this meeting. So you just want to avoid it. You never want to actually, just avoid it.
Okay.
Just send all your stuff through Justin and Kendall, and they'd be happy to communicate with everyone else. It just is this easier
Sounds good.
and safer. All right, well, the next part is more of the nitty-gritty of meeting management itself. So this is kind of the role of individual characters in the committee. So the chair is Troy. So the chairs generally don't have any powers than any other committee member. Their role really is to just sort of lead the meeting and make sure it's being efficient and staying on track. The other thing they want to do is make sure, especially in virtual meetings, this is kind of difficult, that everyone's had an opportunity to comment if they want to. Now, the little hand in the corner can work pretty well, but sometimes people are a little hesitant to put their hand up or something. So the chair is generally there to kind of facilitate the meeting itself. It's also there, as Troy mentioned earlier, to stick to the agenda and don't get too far off track. You want to make sure that you're moving through the items efficiently. You don't want to start spinning wheels and say if the same conversation's happening over and over again and it's not really moving the meeting forward. The chair might make a comment, hey, if you don't have anything new to add, we want to just move on, or could you consolidate your point really quickly? You don't want to come across as like trying to be pushy or anything, but it's for the good of the body, really, just to keep things moving ahead. The other thing the chair does is maintain decorum, and decorum can be a lot of different things. It can be just professionalism in the meeting. It can be protecting other members from like attacks of some kind, like mean words, like, you always say no to everything I want, something like that, and be like, oh, wait, take a minute. We want to be professional in our meetings. Let's not have personal attacks. So, and the chair's job is to intervene when something does go off the rails. Sometimes this can happen, especially in more contentious city commission meetings where there'll be really, really passionate members of the community that might start cursing or using really mean language towards the commission or staff or someone else. And the chair generally is the one that would step in and go, hey, thank you for your public comment, but we have rules here about, decorum, and you need to, stop cussing in the commission chambers in a public meeting, right? So it's just like basic stuff like that. Be professional, avoid personal attacks. The other one is respecting the vote of the body, even when you disagree. Don't, stand up and stomp out of the room because you didn't go your way. It's just part of decorum. So the vice chair's role is really just the substitute chair. So they'll serve as chair in the absence of the chair. So say Troy has to go to a meeting on the other side of the country and can't make it for PRAC this month. That case, I believe it is Karen, correct, is the vice chair. She would step in and manage the meeting for that the rest of that day. The other thing I didn't put on the slide here, the chair typically isn't able to make a motion themselves. So for minutes or whatever else, they'll have to wait for someone else to make the original motion. And that's just really to make sure it's kind of a check on the chair to make sure that the chair isn't sort of pushing the meeting forward and making it all about them, if that makes sense. It's just a courtesy thing. If you'd imagine if the chair could make motions themselves, it'd be, might cut short debate and things like that. So talking about debate, these are the general motion practice. So generally there's discussion when an item comes up for discussion, of course. There'll be discussion for a while. there'll be a motion and a second. I'm probably boring all of you, but sometimes it's good to go over the basics. And then after that motion and the second, there's a thing called debate. It's different than discussion, and only a nerdy parliamentarian will make this distinction, but it comes up a little bit later. So that's why I bring it up. That is optional. You don't have to, especially on consent agenda items, which I don't think PrAC uses consent agendas, but consent agendas, there is generally no more debate after the motion and the second, because the whole point of a consent agenda is to move things along quicker. Then the chair restates the motion. Generally, this is only if it's really confusing as to like the motion. This happens sometimes at the city commission meeting when they want to say adopt minutes with an amendment to those minutes. They'll have to list out the changes they want to make, or even sometimes we'll make amendments to resolutions that are up for adoption. And so they'll say motion to approve for resolution XYZ amended such that section 2C reads as blah, 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 as amended. You know, it can get really, really convoluted. So it's good to have that in the record as this is the motion. So saying it again, generally a good practice. If it's complicated, if it's something easy, no, you can skip it. And then you vote. I'll talk about voting on the next slide, a little bit more detail. The other common things that can come up, and this is sort of Robert's Rules light, is points of order. So this is the tool that somebody that isn't the chair has a question or thinks something's not going the right way. This can happen at any time. So in the motion, discussion, debate, whatever, they can make a point of order. I don't think that this motion was seconded, for example. And then the chair generally makes a ruling on that. So they would say, yeah, that's true. Does anyone want to second this motion that's on the table? The other points of order can actually be about decorum. So if, say, one member is uncomfortable about what someone else said, they can say, hey, point of order. I don't think what they said really fits our decorum rules. We really appreciate it if they were less rude about whatever they were saying. And then the chair would say, that's a good point. Thank you. Point well taken. So that's the phrase in Robert's Rules, is point well taken. If there's a debate, if it can't be resolved clearly, as a committee, as a governing body, you can kind of make that decision yourself. Can you say like, as a consensus, we all think that actually wasn't that rude and it was fine. We just want to be careful with what we say. So you can discuss it as a group too. It's not always up to the chair. The other reason, the other common thing that can come up too, and it's more because I hear it frequently as a phrase, and I just want to make sure everybody knows what it means. It's people that say, let's call the question. So if you dig down into the Robert's Rules, and I don't necessarily recommend it because it can get really confusing and complicated. Call the question is something that happens during debate, not discussion. So it's after the motion has been made and seconded. And what that does is it ends debate while the motion is pending, and the chair asks for a second for that motion to call the question. So there's a motion, there's the overall motion, and then there's the second motion that's going on in between. A 2/3 vote passes it, and that ends the debate and moves directly to vote on the rest of the motion that was previously motioned and seconded already. So you have like a little mini vote inside the bigger vote. People say it a lot, and that's why I bring it up, is like, you're not really calling the question, because a lot of people they're just discussing stuff and then they don't take a vote. And so they're not really calling the question. So I just like to bring it up as, if you're just asking the chair, like, hey, let's vote, that's different than a motion to call the question. Just be clear. The other thing that I wanted to bring up is the appeal. So that's if the chair does something that maybe you disagree with and don't think that it was the right call. Maybe he says, let's go to the next item on the agenda and skip this one. And then somebody goes, wait, I want to talk about that item. I don't want to skip it today. So then the person goes, hey, I'd like to appeal that. moving on to the agenda. And that's resolved, of course, by the committee, the group as a whole, not just the chair. So do you guys have any questions about that? This can be kind of technical and boring. But if anybody has any questions, please let me know.
So if I'm understanding correctly, that essentially the motion to call is really for really just the end of the debate.
Yeah, it doesn't, so if,
It doesn't, it's not voting on the motion. You're essentially ending the debate to move to a vote.
yeah, on the main motion, right?
Right.
So that happens, and doesn't happen during discussion.
Correct.
It happens after there's been a motion and a second, and then you resume discussion, which is debate of that item.
Yeah.
So then if you're just like tired of talking about it and you already think that everybody's going to vote for it or against it, and there's no point in talking about it anymore, you could do a motion to call the question. And I guess that would be mainly used for if there's like one member. You have to remember that Robert's Rules is made for really contentious large organizations, not PrAC. If there's like a certain group of people that are hijacking the meeting, basically by continuing debate and debate and debate when the vast majority of people are ready to move forward. So it's kind of the anti-minority motion. Like if there's one group of people that are hijacking the meeting. So it just keeps things moving. That's the whole point of Robert's Rules, is like efficiently moving through as a governing body through certain things. So that's why I kind of do the light version of Robert's Rules, because it's designed for bigger organizations, and you never want to fall into the trap of arguing about the rules, because the rules themselves are supposed to make the meetings more efficient, and arguing about the rules makes it less efficient. So sometimes the light version is easier to use. And it really comes down to is you act as a group. So if the group decides they want to do something and everybody agrees, then that's the way it goes. All the rules bend to the group.
Thanks.
Brent, what you got, Brent?
A couple questions. Is that Robert's Rules, ROBERTS?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. I have to Google that. I haven't heard that before.
Oh.
Very great presentation, Jacob. Are these anywhere to be found on like the city website, or will they accompany the minutes when they go out?
So this presentation is actually included in your agenda packet. And
Okay.
at the end of the presentation, I'll actually show you where you can find all the stuff for all the meetings, including the city commission, PrAC, all of those.
Perfect. Thank you.
Joey.
Yeah, thanks, Jacob. I have a quick clarification on the 2/3 majority to pass. That's for the motion to call the question, and then the overarching motion that's under debate is just simple majority. Is that right?
Yeah, typically, unless there's some other weird rule. In your case for PrAC, it's a majority, right? There's nothing in your bylaws that requires a 2/3 majority for minutes. If that was the case, if you were having a motion to call the question, it would be not a majority, it would be 2/3, but that's a theoretical thing.
Gotcha.
So yes, in PrAC world, 2/3 to motion to call the question, then simple majority for everything else.
So Justin, just to clarify that one piece, depending on the numbers, depending on who's present at the meeting, that 2/3, it can't be slightly under, it's got to be 2/3 plus one, or, on the upper side of that, right? To be sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
So if it ends up being like 3.5 people are required to pass it, that means 4.
Right. Okay.
All right, Karen, what you got?
And just to clarify on Troy's heels here, that's 2/3 of the members present and more than 1/2 of the members present. As long as you have quorum, you count the heads there. It's not the total membership.
I believe that's true, yes. I'd actually need to check on that. With certain things it isn't that way, but I don't think that applies here.
There are esoteric exceptions, and I am the nerdy parliamentarian.
There you go. I know budget committees are the majority of the committee and not the committee present. for budget committees, but that's a whole nother thing. Budget committees from state law are a minefield. But yeah, so is there any other questions about this? Those things, the other common things probably very rarely come up. And you're probably not going to encounter them ever. But they could, so. All right, well, the next one is voting. So there's two different kinds of voting styles. There's roll call style, where you go through each member and ask them yes or no, aye or yay or nay. And then there's acclamation style, where it's all in favor say aye, aye, right? Those are the two different kinds. Roll call voting's easy because you know what everyone's vote was. Acclamation, there's a couple little hangups that you have to make sure you do. If you don't ask for the nays and you don't ask for the abstentions, technically the vote is somewhat invalid because you don't actually know if there were any nays. And so we need to know at least if there was some. If it ever is clear, like if there's ever some nays or something, in this case for PrAC, I'd recommend just going to a roll call vote, especially in a remote context, because it can be really hard to, with the audio, the way things work, it's hard to tell how many people are voting in one way or the other. So oftentimes roll call is better. But if you're doing like passing the minutes, for example, and you do an all in favor say aye, aye, all against say nay, crickets, any abstentions, crickets, then you're fine. And the reason that the acclamation style voting exists is just simply to move quicker. Because if it's something simple like minutes and there's nobody interested in making any changes or anything, and I don't know why anyone would vote no on minutes anyway, but theoretically they can. The types of answers, aye or yay or yes, those are all the same. Nay or no. Abstention, so for voting purposes, counts as a no. So sometimes folks will say I abstain because I don't want to make a choice. Technically, you are still making a choice. You're voting no, but without voting no. So that's just something to think about if you ever are thinking about abstaining from a certain vote. You're going to end up being counted as a no. Conflict of interest rules, I don't think this will ever come up in PrAC because it's serving it as an advisory context and it doesn't really make it financial decisions one way or another. But these conflict of interest rules really focus on financial interests. Potential conflicts are things that you might think you're indirectly could be a conflict, but you're not sure. When you do that, you can still participate in the meeting. You can still vote. You just need to say your conflict whenever it becomes apparent that it exists. If there's an actual conflict of interest, you cannot participate in the discussion and you would not vote. But you can, in this little caveat, you can vote if you're not participating means that you wouldn't have a quorum. I don't think this would matter at all for what you're doing anyway, because most of what you're doing has nothing to do with financial, like you're not issuing grants or voting on budgets. So you won't have to worry about them too much, but just keep those in mind, something to think about. Those are handled by the Oregon Government Ethics Commission. Another common question that I get a lot, or at least it's something I want people to ask me, and so you're along for my ride. Can you vote on minutes when you weren't at that meeting, or if you even weren't on the board at the time? You can vote on minutes from before you were even on the board, because you're not voting as yourself. You're voting as a member of the group. If that makes, then that's kind of a mind switch. You are now, when you enter into this meeting, a member of the committee, and the committee is approving the minutes or not you as a person saying, I think these are correct. So you can totally vote yes. And if you feel uncomfortable about that, you can go and read them. You know, we have the videos posted online, which I'll show you later. And you can look and make sure that you feel comfortable with it. But just remember, you know, you're a member of the group. You're not approving them personally. That I found this interesting quote on one of these trainings I've attended in the previous years. You're like a train, and the train keeps moving even if people get on board and leave the train. But the train is still the train. So think about it that way. You're voting as a member of a passenger on the train, not as yourself. So that's that. Sort of just a pet peeve of mine, I guess. And being a member of a public committee. So this is the other thing I've been kind of hinting on here and there through this whole thing is you're a member of a group. You're not necessarily an individual. So when you're taking an action as a group member of the group, you're of that. I don't know if I'm explaining that very clearly. Outside of the committee, you can only really represent yourself and your own views. But when you're in the committee, you can actually discuss it as like we're thinking this way. So say you're out at the grocery store and you bump into a neighbor and you say, hey, we want to talk about Park Place Park. You can say, awesome, I want to hear from you. I can't speak for PRAC, but I can talk to you as a member, as an individual. But so you can't really make any promises, if that makes sense. So if they say, hey, I want Park Place Park to be on the next PRAC meeting about XYZ, you can say, okay, that sounds like a great idea. I'll pass that on to Justin and Kendall, and we'll talk about that. But I can't do that myself. So that's just something to think about as like that kind of mindset. You know, I'm a member of a group. I can't make decisions by myself. The other aspect of this is as an advisory group, elected officials are democratically elected. So they have the most authority in the city to determine the city's goals and the desired outcomes. So that gives them the oomph of, you know, I'm democratically elected and I'm here to represent the city. So their word is kind of, right, like those pictures I'd show you, they're the pinnacle, right? They're the ones that represent the public. Not that you don't represent the public, and I don't take that the wrong way, but they're the pinnacle. Appointed officials help them in that job. So they're trying to help them improve the policies and things in achieving the city commission's goals and outcomes that they're trying to get. And this kind of ties into that personal group mentality, or individual versus the group thing. If you're really, really passionate about something, and I'm sure, you know, as a member of PRAC, you are passionate about parks. If you're really passionate about something, you should communicate that to your elected officials. You don't necessarily, and you should bring that passion and that idea to PRAC, but to really get it adopted into policy, you have to go up to the city commission and talk to them. Now, when you do that, you're doing it as a citizen. You're doing it as yourself. You might say, of course, they're going to know you're a member of PRAC, but you're doing it as yourself. In contrast, if there was something that came up and PRAC wanted to say, hey, city commission, we really want your attention on this, maybe PRAC could write a letter as a group to send to the commission or something. But then it's something that the group wrote and not just an individual. It's a good point. And feel free to have me any questions after the meeting if you want about that. There's a couple other rules that come from the state. These are ethics rules. Favoritism. So they use the word customers. I would say, you know, residents of the city. Equally, no special favors. Don't use your position to get something from someone. So no special privileges because of your position. Yeah, don't try to say that I'm going to use my position to, you know, help you out on your development. And if you throw me some money, That's not ethical. Don't do that. Confidentiality rules, that's probably not going to come up too much with PrAC, but I do want to mention it. No profiting from the business, either directly or on the side, of course. So don't use your position in PrAC to line your pockets, please. Try not to take on work that conflicts with your job for PrAC. So say there's some group out there that's called Destroy the Parks. Don't become a board member for Destroy the Parks nonprofit, because that would conflict with your role with PrAC. State laws limit your ability to receive gifts. So the gift is $50 per person per year. So think about that and be mindful of that. Of course, that's only if you have a recommendation or a decision-making authority over the source. And so you really aren't probably going to have too many of those issues. Don't use personal property for your own use. If you maybe come to City Hall and borrow some chairs or something, please don't take them home and use them in your house. And if you notice somebody doing something, let Justin or Kendall know. These are pretty basic stuff, so don't worry if you're dozing off right now, but I have to bring them up. So I just thought I'd turn it back to you if you have any takeaways and questions. After the questions, I'll go on a really brief tour of the website and those links that I provided in the staff report if you didn't see them. So if you guys have any takeaways?
I have a question. Are you gonna wait? You want to do those after the takeaways?
Either way.
So on the couple slides back, when you talked about where we work as a group, we represent as a group, not individuals.
And this is a tough one. It's tough.
Yeah, it can be. I guess we have not. What I'm going to ask has not been an issue here in PrAC. It hasn't come up, so I'm not even focusing on anything in particular. But it just caused me to think and wonder. And I had asked Kendall a while back, and we both kind of said, "Gee, I'm not really sure." But often we will discuss a topic, and the presenter will ask us to sign a letter to take to City Commission or something. In the event, and typically when that happens, the chair is the one that signs it on behalf of PrAC.
Mm-hmm.
If the chair, however, personally had an issue with it, maybe voted against it, and maybe had, I don't know, ethical issues with it or personal, whatever it might be. Like I said, this is nothing we've had, but it just caused a question. The chair's name is on that, but the chair doesn't support it, but the chair has a role as chair. So how does that get handled, and what do we do in that case? Since we are a group.
I suppose, it could go multiple different ways. If the committee, of course, because they're making that decision as a group, right? If they really wanted to make you, I don't want to mean like force you to, like holding your hand on the paper, but what I mean is if they really needed that authority and representation as chair, they could ask you to sign it as a PrAC member, as the PrAC chair. And of course this would come up in discussion during the meeting. If you expressed, I'm really uncomfortable signing my name to this, would somebody else volunteer, or would each member like to add a line to the letter and sign individually? So that's another option. It really depends on what the role of in that context, what the role of the chair is there. If they're coming up and saying, we really, really need the chair of PrAC to sign this, the motion could be, we move that we approve this letter and Troy signed the letter as chair. And that's kind of, separating your role as an individual from your role as, the member of the group and your position of chair, right? Right, you're acting for the body, you're not acting for yourself. So right. You could always write a letter separately saying, I'm uncomfortable personally with this. I signed that letter as in my role as chair and not as an individual. You could always do that on your own. Of course, the other way around that is to ask, hey, is it all right if Karen signs this as vice chair instead of me this time? Or why don't we all sign it if we're comfortable with it? But we're still.
Well, I guess the letter, depending on what it is, could be drafted in a way that is very clear that as a group, we are supporting this. So it doesn't, not misconstrued that it's, that it's a body, not individuals.
Right, exactly. And that's the key point is, a group versus me, right? So Ken, you've got another question?
Yeah, what about elections and campaigning and that sort of thing?
So in what way? That's a good
Well,
question.
it's my understanding that I think as it relates to, say, city elections, that as a board member, we're actually kind of treated like, we're kind of considered staff in a sense, at least as far as elections goes. So we need to kind of stay neutral. We can't use our position as a PrAC member to weigh in on an election. Now, we can do it obviously individually, but you have to leave off, you can't say, well, I'm a member of the PrAC and I think we need to do this. You can say, I think we need to do this, but I happen to be a member as well. Or so, I mean, there's some fine lines there. And I know it's kind of ambiguous, but
Right.
what's the Oregon City's kind of policy on that?
We don't want to step on your rights as a citizen, right? To go
Right, I get it.
advocate for things you want to approve, want to change. But yeah, PrAC, again, this is kind of going back to that same role as a group. You don't want to go off and say PrAC supports this legislation. That's kind of not PrAC's role,
Right.
unless the city commission say refers something to PrAC about a ballot measure concept that they haven't even voted on yet. That's different. But generally you want to stay away from it. And if you're out on your own doing, good citizen work, make sure that you say clearly, like, I'm representing myself. I happen to be a member of PrAC, but I'm here today as Ken Morris. Right?
Yeah, I'm thinking to say, for example, if there was a general obligation bond or something for parks specifically, then we have to kind of dial back our advocacy. Although you can be supportive and obviously you work with the commission to present it, but you have to kind of dial back the advocacy part of it. So it's really about advocacy, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you just want to be really careful there and tread really carefully.
Right.
Jacob, can I make one point there, though? Ken's on the right track, I think, but I think there may be a difference in that we are an advisory committee. We are not the ones approving ordinances or statutes or doing anything like budgets or things like that. And I think that line gets a bit, isn't nearly as black and white, shall we say, for us as an advisory committee, since we're not involved in making those kinds of decisions. At least that's the way I had been taught.
Yeah, that's true. The other thing I'd bring up too is that, your bylaws kind of outline your goals, and you can kind of think of this as your job description. And if it's not something that has come down from the city commission and they've asked you specifically to do something, it starts not being the role of PrAC, right? It starts falling into your individual interests. So if that makes sense. So if there's some thing that's going on at the city commission level and they haven't asked PrAC to do anything about it, and maybe it involves parks or not, you're already kind of moving outside of your job description, if that makes sense. So it may be even more of a simple question of, are you acting on your own, something that you really care about, and it has nothing to do with PrAC's work, right? Hey, Karen, what you got?
I just kind of wanted to clarify, and I'm completely on track with you. After many, many years of appearing before the commission for various reasons, I introduced myself as now a resident of Oregon City, speaking only for myself. I am currently a member of this committee, that committee, whatever, but I am not speaking on behalf of them. This is my personal opinion.
Mhm.
It is so much safer because I got into all kinds of hot water on social media over some problems with the Citizen Involvement Committee,
Oh,
where I had clarified everything I wrote, everything I said. I
Mhm.
clarified I was speaking only for me, but was still accused of using my power,
right.
which is so massive when you are a member of CIC. And even being careful, there's sometimes repercussions depending on how other people feel on the topic. So
Mhm.
safer just to make clear that it's just you speaking for you,
Right.
unless you've been designated as the point person for PrAC.
Right. And the other thing to think about too, not only will you possibly get heat from the community, but when you come back to PrAC, they might be upset with it too, right? You went and talked for us and we didn't say that was okay and that's not what we agreed, right? So that's something to think about too, is you don't want to, you want to be in support of your group and make sure everybody's getting along and everybody understands the ground rules. So yeah, that's that. Did anybody have any other takeaways or questions? It doesn't look like it. So I'll go ahead and switch over to giving you a little tour of our website. So this is our main web page, our home page. And if you scroll down to the bottom here, this is my favorite page. And you'll know why, because it's all the meeting stuff that I like. So this is where we post all of the agendas and the minutes, and also the videos get linked. If you notice over here on the right, this is our meeting today, the 24th at 7 o'clock. Over here, this is where the video will show up after the meeting. We do that as fast as we can. We have to manually put that link, so sometimes it'll take a minute. So these icons here, this is the agenda document, and this is the agenda packet. I recommend clicking on this HTML under the packets because it's really convenient. If you click on that, it shows you the agenda, but it also has links to the documents that are attached. So if you wanted to look at the minutes for tonight that you approved, you could click on this link and it opens them up. These are up as soon as the agenda is posted. And this is the presentation for tonight. Here's the staff report. Here's my presentation. I also linked the commissions or boards and commissions manual for you to look at if you're interested, and also the city commission's goals. So you can open up my staff report, and I gave you a few links to our website. If you notice, this is like planned a little bit. So you can click on this and it takes you to the commission's goals for this biennium. You can look through these on your own time, but I thought I would just show you where they are. You can scroll down here. I do recall there are a few things about parks. So those would be something I'd want to take a look at if I was a member of PrAC. The other one is the meeting schedule. That's the page that I just showed you. The orientation manual. This is a really long document, 44 pages, but it talks about everything I've talked about, plus anything else. I'm not sure that it has as much about, meeting management and Robert's rules. And if you do look up Robert's rules later, it's Robert's Rules of Order. But it has quorum, attendance, conflicts of interest, pretty much everything I've been talking about. Really convenient. The other thing is the website version. So we have that manual in a website format, so you can click on individual sections. I just thought I'd add it because it's a little more convenient and you don't have to download a 44-page PDF and scroll through it. The other link I have on here is the PrAC webpage. So you actually have your own webpage here. It has the contact information for Kendall Reed and Denise Conrad. And this is going to change here pretty soon. But right now you can see the member rosters embedded in our website. We're actually going to be switching away from this program, which is called Granicus soon. So we'll be using a different one. So this will look a little bit different, but there'll still be the member roster on this page. It also has your applications, your PrAC bylaws, and links to other things. The other thing I wanted to show you is the city recorders page. So this is a little bit of, shameless plugging, but this is our page for the city recorder. And if you are ever curious about minutes that were approved way back when, I want to show you this thing called the web drawer. It's a way to access the back end of our archiving system and access ordinances and everything straight away. So if you want to see in 2014 an ordinance that was passed, you just click that link and it's going to show you every ordinance passed in 2014. We also have the same thing for resolutions, all kinds of other stuff here. So that was my shameless plug. Did anybody have anything else they were curious about? I did want to show you the YouTube page too, where all of our videos get posted. And if you'll see, we can have a little bit of a deja vu because here we are. We're live right now on our website. But you guys have any questions? No? Well, then I'll go ahead and stop sharing my screen and give it back to Justin and Kendall. Oh, it
Jacob?
looks like Steve has a question.
Well, Jacob, I just want to say, in my past life, I've been through a number of these kinds of presentations, both receiving them and giving them.
Oh,
And I'll be honest with you, this has been one of the better ones.
oh, thank you.
More inclusive and informative than most of the ones I received over the course of my 40-year career. So you're to be commended. It's very good and very helpful.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, for a guy who comes from the private sector, I'm not much of a rule follower, so this is good.
Well, it can be fun too. Rules can be fun.
Good stuff. Thank you.
Says the attorney, right? Yeah, nobody but an attorney would say that. Well, that's the only few questions, then I think I'll say a good night to you guys.
Yep,
Thank you so much, Jacob. It was great.
it was great.
Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you, Jacob.
Thank you, Jacob.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob.
All right. Well, thank you all. Have a good night.
You too.
Perfect. That was wonderful. I had never, many of you are new, and so that was a training, but I guess more of an FYI, none of us have ever seen that. So that was brand new now. Some of us have gotten training, in years past, but it was different. This was really, really good. So very much appreciate that. Next up, we've got John going to talk to us about give us a park rental update. And John, before you start that, I have a question, put you on the spot here a little bit. I'd always called you Jonathan, and it seems like everyone's calling you John now, and I want to make sure I get it right. So do you have a preference, or is this a change that I didn't hear about?
You can call me either. My God-given name is Jonathan.
That's still okay to do that. All right.
Yeah. Jonathan, I respond to both. I'm the youngest of four. I also respond to other names like Doug, Ben. I've been called a lot of things being the youngest in my family. So
Good. Looking for it.
Fair enough. It's all you.
I'm going to be sharing my screen with you all. So bear with me. Justin, can you allow me to share my screen?
Yeah. All right, you should be good.
right, can everyone see this okay?
Yep.
Yep.
All right. So I was asked to speak tonight about our special event process update. So back in 2000, I want to say 19, we had been at the city commission and we're discussing our special event and the process that we go through. And we were asked to take a look and see if there were ways that we could improve upon our special event process. So in 2021, we did an evaluation. We brought in a consultant and 2 surveys were conducted. The information from those surveys was reviewed and evaluated, and things that we were seeking were the ease of finding information about hosting events in Oregon City, what the definition of a special event was as opposed to, say, reserving a shelter, the website information and its availability, and then special events and their permit requirements. So this was some of the things that we tried to capitalize on information gathering. We were looking for external and internal feedback, just looking to see, you know, whether it was folks who had done a special event within our parks, had an event, or also people within the industry, and what if they were to walk through our process, what would it be like for them trying to hold an event in Oregon City? So these are our findings and observations. There was a lot more information, but when you're giving a PowerPoint presentation, I just wanted to kind of get down to the nuts and bolts of it all. So as you can see from this slide, that in general, people felt that it was either extremely easy, very easy, or okay, trying to prepare themselves to host a special event in the park in Oregon City. What concerned us was the folks who, you know, and we circled it in red there. There were certain folks who found it not so easy, and a small portion extremely difficult. So overall, we had a 94% that were in the okay to extremely easy, but there was a 6% number for folks that were having difficulties with our process. And so that's where we wanted to try and improve and do better. So areas that were identified during our surveys for improvement were our links. So clicking on our links and being able to connect. We were able to complete this already, reaching out to our IT department. Web page edits, which have already been completed. Updating prices with a new master fee schedule, which has been completed. We also created a facts sheet, which you know, should show people, you know, some common problems that have come up and ways to work around that. We are in the process of updating all of our site maps for our event venues. So we're working with our GIS department on that. And so hopefully we'll be completing that in the near future. We also discussed venues and being used for special events. Some parks just don't lend themselves as well for special events. And we heard that feedback as well. And so we narrowed down what venues should be used for special events. I am going to refer to it as special events, probably because that's just ingrained in my brain. But one item that we felt was necessary to move forward was changing the criteria and the understanding. So people, you know, always thought, oh, I'm having a special event. Well, what does that entail? What does that mean? Well, essentially, it's a park rental. You're renting the park for a certain amount of time. That doesn't mean it's all inclusive per se, but we felt that it cleaned up the language. We're also going to be looking at some new registration software, and that's in process. We'll be following up and finalizing that here shortly. And then also the discussion of EnerGov. So some of the confusion came from people who were wanting to hold a special event were confused because there's multiple divisions within Oregon City that you could have to reach out to for a special event. And so, you know, if you were wanting to block off streets down in Main Street, you don't contact the Parks Department, you're going to contact Public Works. There was also some confusion on whether or not there were city-sponsored events, and that is going to be headed up by our Economic Development Department. And so this is another area that you know we've had conversations about and trying to streamline the process and how we can do better as a city. But overall, in general, there's already the conversations, the framework, and that's in process as well. So, for example, these are the park rental frequently asked questions. And so this was just an example of some of the questions, but we put together a facts page. And so if you go to the Parks and Rec page, you can find this information, and hopefully it helps to answer a lot of people's questions that might come up in the process ahead of time. So just trying to improve communications with the community before they have to contact us and start asking our staff questions, trying to catch it on the front end. This is an example of our 2022 master fee schedule. This has aquatics and the Pioneer Center as well, but this shows what a shelter reservation would be, and then a park rental. And like I had said, we're trying to streamline our process, funneling people into our parks that have more capacity and more space. Now, we would still allow a park rental at any of the other parks. It would just be, you know, questioned a bit more. So, like, for example, we don't want to be hosting a park rental when we have 4 baseball games being played at Chapin Park, or you know, Hillendale Park has fairly limited parking, and it's also one of our sports parks, so can create conflict if we have something going on. So we were able to narrow this all down and update our fee and our schedule. So that's what I have as far as an update for our special events, which are now park rentals, and the process on it. And I'd be glad to answer any questions if you guys have them.
Great update. Thanks.
Any questions for Jonathan?
I have a question.
Okay,
Hey,
Tim.
Jonathan. So these are special events, and Troy, I don't know if this falls into the category of a special event, or where do the memorandums of understanding come into effect here for the general usage of park facilities? is this going to be a charge for people using the boat ramp or the RV parking, the campsites, or football teams or baseball teams or pickleball courts?
Good question. We don't allow football on our park fields, so we don't have to worry about that. But no, there's never been any discussion as far as anything with use of a boat ramp or the RV park. Memorandums of understanding is where we have groups. For example, I'm working on one right now with the Greater Oregon City Watershed Council, who is wanting to do the project at Abernathy Creek Park that they came and presented to you all. So an MOU, we want to make sure that we're having, something in writing instead of just a verbal agreement that, Greater Oregon City Watershed Council is going to, plant some plants and, improve a pathway and a trail. But it doesn't give the city anything to say like, well, here's what we agreed to, or here's, so we've executed one with the Oregon City Youth Sports. So we want to make sure that the general understanding is in agreement if they're going to be utilizing the sports fields. And yes, with pickleball and anybody else who in that sense is getting a park asset that's going to be utilized by just them at those junctions in time. So we would only, like for a baseball game, and I think that you could see that master fee schedule. It shows, that it would be $10 per field. So that's where we're at as far as that goes. But yeah, this is completely different though. This is like, someone wants to host the art festival at the end of the Oregon Trail. Well, that's going to be a park rental. And then, they would go through our processes and or a brew fest, or someone wants to have a bouncy house with a rock climbing wall. So those are all things that we end up having out at our park sites.
Sure. My question was more in regards to is a memorandum of understanding part of the cost recovery plan for regular groups utilizing fields and courts, soccer teams, baseball teams, pickleball clubs?
Yes. And so when we're asking these groups, particularly these groups that we have longstanding relationships with, what we found out is that these groups have expectations. We also have expectations of services that we can provide. So we felt it would be in our best interest in regards to communication to outline the relationship, to outline responsibilities, so everyone would be on the same page. So like John gave an example with Oregon City Youth Sports, we've had a longstanding relationship with this group, and we've operated in a certain manner. But what we've realized is they had expectations, we had expectations, and they weren't all coming together. Everybody wasn't on the same page. So we worked together on a memorandum of understanding to outline, hey, this is what we're going to provide. These are your reservations. These are the times that you have access to these particular fields. So that would be clearly outlined. So we didn't have the issues of, well, I thought you were going to do this. Nope, this is what we agreed to. So it outlines the relationship in a more orderly fashion and also improves communication moving forward.
Do you have a fee schedule for these groups that are targets of these memorandums of understanding?
All the groups have fee schedules associated with them based on the activities that they're doing. And we've had a lot of these fees well before we presented this information during our cost recovery. So the fee schedule is something that we're going to be implementing July 1st of 2022. So what we've been doing specifically with our financial sustainability strategy is last year we started communicating what the new changes are, what the new fee schedules are. We put it in Trail News, we put it in newsletters. We're also reaching out to these groups directly. We're currently drafting a letter to go out to some of these longstanding groups where we have relationships to make sure that they're aware of these changes moving forward so they can prepare. But we've been doing everything within our power to make sure that that information gets out to the community so there wouldn't be any surprises moving forward.
Do you have a published list of how much it costs for each one of these groups?
The master fee schedule is listed.
Where?
All the fees are listed on the master fee schedule.
Okay. And where could I find that in the public documents that were just stated by our previous speaker here, to John?
Well, it'll be attached to this agenda. It's within the presentation.
It's in the presentation he just showed you.
All right. Great, thank you.
Aaron, did you have questions, comments?
Yes, give me 1 second here though on something. On the attachments to the meeting, I don't see the master fee schedule attached. I see a staff report and I see the PowerPoint, but it's actually missing one slide that I needed. So I'm
sure Justin will make sure that everything's on there.
Okay, and just general question, because I've run into problems in the past over scheduling a picnic for the neighborhood association. From what I think I saw when I was looking at those fees, 1 to 35 people for the Rivercrest shelter is free. And then over 36 and over for a resident, the fees seem to kick in. I'm not seeing a fee for 35 or under. But it was also a problem because trying to sign up online to reserve the space, it wanted me to make a deposit for what I had been told was free for the neighborhood associations. Has that been?
I think you're mixing some things in here in regards to the city's relationships with neighborhood associations and what access the city provides in regards of like facilities and meeting spaces. Now, the city will be outlining what spaces will be available for neighborhood associations. And I know the city manager is working with different divisions to kind of outline what those spaces will be moving forward. The question you have about shelter reservations, that's not something that has been discussed as an option for neighborhood associations. I would be happy to share that information with the city manager, but they are looking at facilities and spaces within facilities as options for neighborhood associations to meet.
Okay, so basically, in the past, most neighborhoods have an annual picnic or gathering of some sort at their park. Rivercrest being lucky enough to have a shelter, we usually reserve the shelter. We had never been charged for it. And then it started sounding like maybe we were going to have to start paying for it. And I hadn't actually heard an answer to it. So now I know where it is. It's in the pipeline somewhere.
Yes.
So just take note that that is a concern for some neighborhood associations that have no money. They don't earn money and they don't make money. And it was a once a year access to their park. So just something, and I know that Rocky had a problem understanding some of the original wording on the fee schedule and how neighborhood associations were going to be treated. So looking forward to a future answer. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments for Jonathan?
All righty.
Okay, moving on. PrAC goals for 2022. This is in the packet, pages 96 and 97. To offer a little bit of background for those who don't know or maybe forgot, we do goals every year for PrAC, and these goals, well, I guess all the goals, typically we'll review them at the first of the year, which most of the time happens around January, maybe February. So we are a little late in doing this, which is really okay because this is kind of a working document or a more of a dynamic document where as goals are finished, they come off. We always have the ability to add goals down the road if necessary. So missing that by a little bit is not a huge problem. You'll notice in the document, in fact, Justin, do you have the goals up to share, or do you want me to share my screen just so they can be in public view as we talk about them?
Yeah, I can just make you co-host really quick.
Okay.
All right, you're good.
All right, hang on here. Goals. Okay, does everyone see the goals now? Okay, so this is in your packet, like I say, page 96, but it's here as well. Some of these have been finished as we go. You'll have the goal and then some notes that might add a little bit of context or kind of the next steps. Then the measure of success. So what is to be determined or needs to happen before these can be completed or considered completed. And then the dates of completion. And on the dates of completion, we've put for, I'll just skip just for example to number 2, where it says work jointly with staff and city commission members, review the deferred maintenance and park infrastructure needs quarterly. And so on the dates of completion, we've put those quarterly dates as far as how they correspond with the meeting. So that's what those are. And then next to them would be completed. So tonight, what we need to do is I've put some notes in here over the time when they're completed. However, to completely remove them as our goals, that needs to be a vote because it would be a change to the goals to take something off of here. So that's what we're going to do tonight is discuss and get a consensus and then vote on whatever amendment we have here based on what's finished. So first off, number 1, review the 2008 Oregon City Parks Master Plan, June 2021. Of course, the date of completion for that was June of 2021. I believe, if my memory serves me correctly, we didn't actually do that in June because we were waiting on some information, but I think it happened in July. And so that was marked complete. Number 2, and some of you can help me remember this, we did May and August. We need to do it. We should have done it last month, so we need to do it again. Justin, if you wouldn't mind making a note that we'll need to do that next month, number 2. Since we didn't do it in February, we'll move to April on that one. And this will be, by the way, I'm not making decisions on my own here, but just comments and notes as we amend these, then we'll be able to amend that portion as well and have a chance to vote on it. And then November 2021, clearly we're past that and we're going to catch anything in that here next month, but I don't remember actually off the top of my head if we did it in November or not. But again, the idea is to continually talk about those every quarter. Number 3 was really 2 parts. We did the cost recovery, which was initially was to get PrAC's I guess you could say, buy-in on the program, which we did in April. And then the idea was the annual cost recovery. We'll have an opportunity to listen to that. And that's what the July 22 is. So that's what those two dates are. And that's going to be an annual thing. So we can decide if we want to leave that on the goals and just change the date to 22, then 23 and so forth. Or if we want to just remove that from the goals and just know that staff is going to bring it to us when it's ready and when they're prepared. So we can discuss if we want to do that. Number 4, appoint a subcommittee for Filbert Run. We did that. That was headed up by Brent Haverkamp. That was completed and the name was chosen. And then number 5, by August 21st, form a subcommittee of PrAC and community members that will gather data and evaluate the interest of the potential need for off-leash. We didn't do that exactly as written, but we did get information from staff that at the time we believed kind of accomplished that goal. So we can talk further about that and see if we're okay with where we're at there. Number 6, review the goals initiative by PrAC and the City Commission and any other boards and committees as appropriate, and do that quarterly. So we need to do that again, make sure that we're kind of in line with what the goals are throughout the city. And then number 7 was completed, provide history and background of Clackamas Park and waterfront master plan, and that was to be done by June of last year, which it was. So those are the goals. Does anybody have any questions, comments, discussion on? And if you do, please mention like what goal number you're talking about, and I'll make sure it's showing up on the screen. Brent, if you would.
Hey guys. Yeah, thank you, Troy. My first question is on goal number 1. Really, my question is, why does the city need to hire a consultant to do this? And I'm kind of curious as to what this is costing the city. I'm going to express, I'm a little bit disappointed that it's not going to be completed until 2023, because I feel like the master plan is something that we should be working off of, and it doesn't give us anything to work off of. So I was just kind of wondering why we're hiring somebody and why we think it's going to take about 2 years to complete.
Well, we do. So this goal, notice it's to review the 2008. So we are in the process, the city's in the process of doing a new master plan. And the new one is what's taking till 23. And I'll let Kendall or Justin touch on that piece, because I'm not as familiar with that. But this one was simply to review the one that we had from 2008, which is not the one we're using going forward, because we're going to do a new one. But the idea was to bring us up to speed, just so we know kind of where we were, because some of us were very familiar with that over the years. Others were not so familiar. So that being way back then in June was to bring everyone up to speed, know where we're at, so that going forward as we create the new master plan, that we kind of know where we were at to begin with and have a baseline. Now, why we're hiring a consultant, I know hiring a consultant and the timeline is typical, so that's not out of the ordinary for any type of master plan, but I'll let Kendall or Justin speak more specific to that.
Yeah, hiring a consultant for a master plan is actually a common practice for every Parks and Recreation department. No one does master planning for a system-wide master plan in-house. There are organizations and consultants that Parks and Recreation departments work with to help put together those plans, because part of the plan is engaging with the entire city to get their input and doing assessments when it comes to our parks, our facilities, and having a skill set that we as individuals would not have, where we would need to hire outside people to come in and do some of that work. So it's common. I've never ever heard of a Parks and Recreation department doing their master plan in-house or updating their master plan in-house. So that's common. To provide an update in regards to kind of where we are, jumping the gun a little bit with my staff report, we have put out the intent to award for our consultant for our parks master plan. And the plan is to have that contract go to the city commission on April 6th for approval and to kick off that master plan sometime in late April, have our first kickoff meeting. And then obviously, once we have our kickoff meeting, then we will be bringing that consultant, introducing that consultant to PRAC, to the city commission, to talk about projects, to talk about schedules, to talk about involvement. Most master plans last a year up to 2 years, and that's just an approximation. We may get done sooner than 2023. I can't make any promises with that, but that's the normal amount of time that it takes to get the necessary assessments and public engagement necessary to have a good master plan moving forward, and to also get it adopted by the city.
Okay, so I guess, Kendall, thank you very much for explaining that. Working in a nonprofit sector, technically, consultants are expensive. So I'm assuming that the city is budgeted for this. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. I would be very, very curious once the consultant is hired and the kickoff meeting has started. I would love to see the project schedule and the project plan for this. Would that be public knowledge?
Actually, I'm going to have him come and present to PRAC and present the information to PRAC.
So that would be awesome.
You will all be the first stop for the consultant moving forward.
Excellent. Thank you, sir.
Brent, since you have the floor now, is there any other goals that you had comments or questions or discussion on?
No, that was the main one. Just, like some of these ones that did fall off to the wayside, like number 2, up above, the working jointly with the staff and city commission. As you can see, November and February, not complete. And if you scroll down, Andy, I think it's line item 6 or 7. Yeah, 6. Review the goals and initiatives, both PRAC and City of Oregon City Commission. Both those have kind of fallen off by the side road there, and I think it'd be in our best interest to get those back up and going. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Tim.
All right, thanks. I'm gonna beat a dead horse, and Kendall, bear with me. I certainly believe in cost recovery for facilities that the city owns and that people come in and use and need to be charged, like the pool. I think that's great and needs to be reviewed every once in a while. Special events, absolutely. I guess my concern is the tipping point on where at what point do we start charging the general public for usage of our city parks? And I was up at Chapin Park today, saw a whole bunch of people up there. It was great to see it being used. There was a guy flying his RC airplanes. I mean, are we going to charge him for going over there to use that kind of stuff? Are we going to start charging for use of the playground? Because boy, there was a lot of kids playing over there, and there's a source of funds too. But it needs it to be maintained and all that kind of stuff. So at what point what is the tipping point, Kendall, as I'm trying to get to? Do we start charging people for the use of our city parks?
So actually, I'm going to go ahead and jump in here because I think you have some good points, but this discussion needs to involve, we need to make sure the city's aware of this. This is one of those topics that as we discuss it, the citizens need to be, aware that it's happening. It needs to be an agenda item. This goal right here is not about what we should or shouldn't charge and who we should or shouldn't charge. This is simply a goal to review the recovery plan and listen to staff with their report. That's all this goal is. It's not for us to analyze it, get feedback or anything. So in the interest of the agenda, I'm going to ask that we keep that comment and those points to the discussion of the recovery plan and not the goals discussion. Tim, do you have any other comments, questions, or anything about any other goals?
No, that's it for this right now, but is there going to be an agenda item that we could look forward to in the future, Troy, for that?
When we get to that piece on tonight's agenda about future agenda items, let's bring that up. The shorter answer is yes, but we'll discuss the details of that when we get to that point tonight. But don't let us forget, because we'll go around the horn and everyone will get a chance to share their future agenda items. Make sure, Tim, you bring that up again. Ken. You're muted, Ken.
I think Karen had her hand up first, but I just had a quick question, and that is whether or not there's a fiscal policy that talks about, that we could review, that, or that we could look at, that talks about cost recovery. So is there a citywide fiscal policy, or is that just something that?
Yes, actually, we went through that process last year.
Okay.
And got it adopted as a policy by the city commission last year. Actually, all of that was filtered through PRAC before we got to the city commission, and PRAC wrote a letter of recommendation to the city commission, and then the city commission adopted it as a policy. And all
So
of that information is listed on our website and is being shared with the community.
And so that'd be in the budget document, probably?
Is
Is that the best place?
Well, it would not be in the budget document. That was something that happened after the budget was adopted. So all that information is listed on our website, and we can send you the links to that.
Okay, I can find them.
Yeah.
And then my other question or statement, I guess, is when there are things like hire consultants and RFP to hire a consultant, those typically sound like they're more of a staff goal. And so I didn't know what is the PRAC's role in developing the RFP, if there was one, or selecting consultants and reviewing the RFPs or any of that?
I'm glad you asked that. So the goal actually is not the RFP or a consultant. The goal is listed to review it. The notes are just simply letting everybody know kind of where we're in that process. And you're right,
Okay.
Staff does the RFP, staff hires the consultant, but that's just where we're at in the process. So
Right.
to kind of help us remember as we're keeping our eye on the goal itself.
So is there any opportunity? Well, I mean, I know that that ship sailed, but was there an opportunity for the PRAC to look at the RFP or review it, or is that just entirely staff?
It wasn't. It did not come to PRAC. None of us requested that it did.
We don't normally bring RFPs through PRAC. So
I'm sorry, you said you do or you don't?
We don't.
Okay.
No.
Yeah.
Well, and then I guess my comment with that is then that kind of helps us decide what part of the master plan and what our role is. If we're not really working with the consultants specifically, then it's a little bit different than, I'm sure we'll undertake, we'll listen to presentations and weigh in on that type of thing, but not really be too hands-on in the master planning process, I guess.
You're right. That's correct. Yeah, we'll always have a chance to weigh in at the appropriate times, but yeah, it's more of a staff function to kind of carry that out and handle that.
Okay, thank you.
Is that it for you, Ken? Any other comments on the goals?
Yeah, I mean, I think that as we move forward, obviously how much work, how many goals and how much work that we are going to be putting forth in the development of the master plan or the review of the master plan really kind of determines how many other goals we should probably be able to add to the plate or not. That's a huge process, and a lot of public involvement, and I think that we have roles as committee members to kind of help support staff as we go out to the public and some of those meetings. And so I think we just want to take that under consideration when we're trying to develop goals so that we don't fill the plate up too much.
Yeah, I think you're right. And that's part of what we can certainly add goals tonight, like that can be part of this discussion. but also as we review the goals, like we'll do the update today as we all agree, but then next month we'll be reviewing the goals, and that will be kind of the time as well to hone in and what do we want to have a goal about, what don't we, and so forth. So that's not a it's not an open and closed case. We'll be able to move to continue to add that as we go. Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Karen.
Sorry, moving around. Okay, and I want to thank you to Ken. You just saved me all kinds of time on something. Starting with number 1, I think we need to rephrase. That is a department goal, and it is something that's on the commission radar. Rather than the current phrasing, maybe establish 2 reviews in 2022 for updates on the process, just to show that, yes, we're interested and we want to know. Number 2 is actually the only joint goal we have with the city commission. And that's moving ahead. Staff has other deadlines they need to meet assigned by the commission. I would say work with Kendall on updating us on those also and reviewing those figures as they become available. Number 3, I would reduce to receive an annual report on the cost recovery report and any recommended changes, period. I'd be more than happy to move to delete number 4, since we renamed the park already. And then can you move down? All right, and I disagree on the dog leash program. I need more from Denise on that, but I'm seeing more and more complaints on social media about dogs off leash in parks that are not designated. We have never reviewed suggestions for additional parks. That committee has never gone anywhere. I would like to see us start that over again, depending on staff availability and staff interest.
So for clarity, Karen, you say you disagree on what, having the goal, or you disagree? What part do you disagree on, number 5?
You basically said you thought it had been taken care of. It has not been taken care of. It was left twice to head up a subcommittee to coordinate with Denise to look at optional parks, changes in existing parks, etc. And to my knowledge, that has never happened. And that one has been put off and put off and put off. I would really like to see that one taken care of this year.
Okay.
What is that? Yeah, and I don't think, the city has 2-year goals. They're limited, but you can see what Jacob attached for us. I'm not sure that every 2 months we really need to be reviewing the city's goals and initiatives. If we taper down a little bit, a quick update on where we are, but since we are setting goal dates, I'm not sure we actually need that one. We just need to set goal dates. And 7 needs to be move ahead on the Clackamas Park master planning. And staff knows where we are on that, and what reports could be available when. That is, completed, that we looked at one, but we've left this with city work sessions, prac sessions, and gone nowhere. Except I do know that things are moving forward to work on the actual master plan. I think that needs to be started over in how it's worded. And again, keep us advised of where we can be a part of that planning, community meetings, et cetera, but set at least 2 times this year to report back on where we are on the Clackamas Park master planning. That's
Okay. So just to add clarity, as we move forward, Steve, I'm going to call on you next, but to add clarity to tonight's discussion is about these goals. It's not about these topics. So number 7 is providing a history of the background. That's been completed. The discussion is not if we should move forward with the master plan or not, or how we should be involved. It's simply the goal as written, provide history of background of Clackamas Waterfront Park by June of 2021. We did that. It's completed. It's done. If we choose to put a different goal on for 2022 that addresses parts of the master plan, we can certainly do that. However, goal number 7 is done and over. Similar to some of these others, they're just done. And so we just have to now agree or not agree that they are done and complete and can be removed. We can then add other goals, but these as written, if they're done, they're done. Steve, you had comments, questions?
Well, Troy, I appreciate the clarity you just gave there, because that's what I was trying to understand really what our objective was here this evening. So I fully agree with what you just said about focusing on these. Were you intending tonight to add some new goals, or are you looking to do that in our April meeting? I'm a little bit confused, because there's a couple of those I agree with, particularly number 7. I agree with Karen that a new goal there is needed. And in number 1, I think there's an extension of that needs to continue on, setting checkpoints and things like that. Those are all things I would agree with. You doing that tonight, or are you doing that in April?
I think it's 2 parts. So number 1, tonight, what we need to do is agree on our amended goals, and the amended goals can simply be, yes, it's completed, we can take it off the list, because I can't just delete things off the list because I think it's done. We have to all agree that our goals as a group have been accomplished. That's number 1. Okay. Number 2, if anybody has, and I'm going to ask you if you propose any goals tonight, that you know exactly how you're proposing it's written, not just something about, or make it kind of like be prepared to propose the writing as you want it tonight. But I also don't think that we can do that tonight and discuss it and finalize that. So I would say that piece should be finalized next month, considering any proposals that are brought forth tonight, but also with the ability to bring proposals for next month's meeting as well. Okay. But the part that needs to be done tonight is the agreement that, yes, this has been completed and that's been completed, and here we have, X number of goals remaining to continue.
And I would certainly agree with your approach there of we would probably be better served to do it in April when we've had a chance to think of that writing, and then have a chance to be able to discuss those a bit more completely than really I feel like we've been able to do here. So anyway, you've clarified for me what I think we need to do. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions then, Steve, or comments about any of the other goals at this point?
No, not at this point in time. Thanks, Troy.
Okay. I see no other hands. Does anybody, Andy, please?
So are you looking for a motion to basically remove the ones that we agreed upon that are complete, and then basically wait till next week?
Yes, but before you make a motion, if you're all okay, I'd like to clarify what it is that I believe has been completed. So when the motion's made, we know exactly what we're agreeing to.
Well, can I make a motion, we second, then we can talk about that?
You can, but your motion typically is going to be as amended or whatever. So, but I'm not going to prevent you from making a motion, of course, so feel free.
Well, we'll go ahead and explain which ones you feel that we should just go ahead and remove them.
Well, number 1 is complete. Number 2, I'm suggesting that we move the February 2022 to April. So there's an amendment right there.
Okay.
And then number 3, leave it just as is because that's forthcoming. Number 4, that one is complete, so we remove that. Number 5, I'd like to come back to in a minute. Number 6, move the March. Let me roll this up. Sorry, guys. Move the March to April. So there's an amendment there. And then number 7 has been complete.
Okay. Well, I guess that I would a motion to go with those amendments then.
Fair enough. Thank you. Second.
Anyone else second, I guess?
So I'll second it.
Okay, so that's Andy with the motion, Ken with a second. And then before we open it for, as Jacob informed us tonight, the debate, right, afterward. Optional debate, right? Kendall, you and I discussed the dog park committee, and I'm not saying I remember this correctly, but what I remember is I believe you had Denise provide, or somebody on staff provide, the data we had, and we all agreed as a committee that that rather than survey and poll the community again, that we had plenty of data that we could make, that we knew what the community was speaking. Is that, what's your recollection on that?
Yes, but the other caveat to that was we were in the process of opening up the dog park at TSW. And so in relationship to like dog parks and having areas for dogs to congregate, we wanted to see with the implementation of having this new dog park, if that would actually meet the need as well, as opposed to continuing to move forward with looking for other off-leash dog areas, because we had also proposed an option of opening another fenced dog park in Stafford Park, but in conversations that we've had with the city commission, they really want to see how the dog park at TSW would do with the community and meet the need before we decided to move forward with doing another fenced dog park.
Okay, so with that information, and Andy, I'm going to just make a comment here, and if you want to amend your motion, that would be fine. But on number 5, I would then propose that we simply change the date here, leaving the goal, and we can push this out whatever we want, because this will probably come up next month as a discussion where we'll be able to maybe refine the wording on this, or maybe choose to eliminate it and add something that's more specific to what we want to accomplish. So I propose at this point that we just simply move it to June of 2022. And again, that may not even happen because next month we may decide to do something completely different. But that's my proposal. And if you want to amend your motion, you're welcome to.
Nope, sounds good.
Troy,
And we
can
have
you
a second on that amended motion.
Troy, can you state the date you picked again? You broke up on my machine.
Oh, okay, yes. So goal number 1, complete. Goal number 2, amend February to be April.
Yep.
Goal number 3, leave as is. Number 4, complete. Number 5, amend to be June 2022.
Okay.
Number 6, amend to from March 2022, amend it to be April 2022. And number 7 is complete. And we have a motion, amended motion by Andy. Do we have a second on that?
I'll second that.
Okay, so that's Justin, that's Andy with the motion on the amended motion, I should say, and then Steve with the second. Ken, did you have more debate before we vote?
Well, yeah, and I don't know if it's maybe the right time or not, but I guess as it relates to goal 5, if we are getting ready to undertake a whole system master plan, it seems to me that basically that whole conversation, instead of taking up a subcommittee to talk specifically about off-leash areas, because people are going to say, well, if you're going to talk about off-leash areas, why don't you talk about softball fields? And, you know, and having all of these individual little conversations taking place, it seems like the logical place for all of that right now would be to fold that into the new master plan.
And I think that's reasonable. I would, because we have a couple members, Karen made her point very clear that she wants to see it stay. And because we have a motion and a second on, I would suggest that we bring that piece up in our discussion about all of the goals next month. And that will help us decide, based on your point there, if we keep it or don't keep it. Because I think both points are valid.
Okay.
Are you okay with that?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Poll, Justin, will you poll, please?
I think Karen had her hand up real quick right before.
Oh, did she? I'm sorry, Karen, did you have another comment?
I actually did, and I want to thank Ken. As long as we don't lose track of things that have been brought to us by citizens, which includes the off-leash parks, working on a new master plan does encompass a broad range of issues that will also come up again when we are having citizen meetings. I'm going to very much appreciate that comment and will be convinced that it doesn't have to stay on as a standalone.
Okay, thank you. Justin, you want to poll?
Yes. Andy Crump,
Yeah,
Brent Haverkamp,
Yep.
Joey Knopf,
Aye.
Tim West,
Aye.
Karen Morey,
Aye.
Ken Worcester,
Yes.
Troy Bullinger,
Aye.
and Steve Williams.
Aye.
And
Motion
Justin,
passed.
I will, thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt there. I will email you the notes that I took just to make sure that with the amendment we make to the goals that your notes and my notes match up.
Yeah, no, that'd be great.
I'll send them to you. And then Kendall, staff reports.
All right. You should have received 2 emails from Justin. One email was in reference to Newell Creek Canyon Nature Park, the opening celebration, which all of you are invited to. It's April 2nd from 11 a.m. to 3 p.m. They're planning on having food and tours, and Northwest Trail Alliance there to do mountain bike basics for kids 8 years and older. So just wanted you to be aware of that. The other email that you received was about the Friends of Trees event that's coming up also on April 2nd, where they will gather at Chapin Park to organize a tree planting event that will take place from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. So just wanted to make sure you all got access to that information. I know I've talked to some of you, and some of you are already planning on attending some of those events. I also wanted to give an update on Hazel Grove Park. All of you who participated in the tour on March 17th, we greatly appreciate it. We did complete our walkthrough on Monday, and we're currently discussing the possibility of possibly opening sometime the end of April if weather is permitting and landscape permitting. So we will keep you up to date on where we are with that process. And then once we have narrowed down a date, we will reach out to all of you to let you know about that. An update on the Clackamas Park Master Plan. All of the people who participated in the public engagement meeting, again, thank you. We had 499 people take the survey, which I think is a record for us. So we got a lot of involvement. The plan is to take the information from the public engagement meeting and the survey and to summarize that information and to share that information on our landing page. Next steps for us, we've met with Lango Hansen to have some discussion around site plans and concept plans and options. We have a date that we're looking at, April 13th, for the next public engagement meeting. We'll have some more information coming out about that in the next couple of weeks to get that information out. And then I want everyone to save the date for May 10th for our joint session with PrAC and the City Commission to talk about the 3 concept plans designed by Lango Hansen and to provide input. But we will have a joint session with the City Commission on that date, and we'll have more information coming out about that.
What time will that be, Kendall?
Let me confirm. I know it's either 6 or 7, but I will definitely make sure to confirm that time and get that information out to everyone.
Thank you.
All right. And that ends my update, and I will turn it over to John. Did we lose John?
Nope, I'm here. So yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone who made it out to the Hazel Grove Parksite walkthrough. Our staff's been working pretty hard to get the grounds in good operational shape. So we're going to continue to do everything we can so that we can keep the Parksite open. Mowing season has started for us, so we're ramping up and getting really busy with getting out there and getting the parks mowed. We've also been doing a lot of tree planting throughout the city and in our parks, invasive removals, end of the Oregon Trail site preparation, getting ready for the reopening of that site in the city. And then we've also been working with several groups. So Kendall had already mentioned the Friends of Tree planting that will be happening April 2nd. So just as some insight into that, I was at the last Friends of Tree planting for the city. It was a wonderful, wonderful morning. I think our group was done by noon and on our way. It's just a great time to meet with fellow citizens and plant trees throughout the community. So I'd really recommend if you guys have some time and are available to attend that. There's another opportunity to get involved within the community, and that's the second Saturday volunteer events that we hold up on the McLaughlin Promenade. We work with the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association and do a lot of various projects, landscaping. We've planted flowers, bulbs, leaf cleanups, weeding. So just another good opportunity. If anyone is interested, I can get more information. One other thing that I wanted to discuss is our seasonal parks maintenance staff. And in the last couple of years, it's become more difficult for us to get applicants to apply for our seasonal park maintenance positions. So if you guys know anyone who's 18 and over and looking for a good job, please let them know that they can look on the city's website and apply for our seasonal parks maintenance positions that we have available right now. So yeah, thank you.
All right, Denise.
Good evening, everyone. Facility staffing, we are still limited hours for one of our staff members, as well as limited ability to do regular work. So we're hoping that we'll get back to our 2 full-time FTEs by the end of the month. So at that rate, we are woefully understaffed for the facilities we currently have. So we are continuing to backlog and maintaining just essential facility functions. And then as far as projects go, we have the West Good Neighbor project, the West Good Neighbor agreement. We have Plan B as our project manager, just to kind of give you guys a catch up. Monday and Tuesday this week, we had a contractor out that was doing invasive removals along the river access trail. The river access trail has 3 areas that we are looking at in terms of projects. Area 1 is near the parking lot. That's city property. It transitions into West property all along the area where the plant is and where their fencing is. That is actually owned by West, although we still maintain the river access trail along their property. And then it transitions back to city-owned property down where the West plant ends their fencing and continues out to Maine and along the cove. So we're calling the parking lot area 1, the West property area 2, and the part by the cove area 3. So our invasive removals encompassed area 1 and area 3. And they brought a crew in and they were able to get area 1 and 3 done in 2 days. And they filled up those giant white and orange rollaway bins, filled 2 of those up with the removal of ivy and some of the other invasives, blackberries and that kind of stuff. So I will have before and after pictures for you guys, and we'll be releasing them on social media through Kristen Brown, our communications coordinator for the city. And we're just waiting for our project manager to get those photos. We've also, last week, Friday, walked the site for area 1, 2, and 3 with an arborist to get a little bit more detailed information for any tree removals that we may be encountering. So along with last year's ice storm, we're still catching up on some of the hazard tree limbs, and we do have some trees that are dead along that trail. So we want to make sure that we're being really careful about what trees we're tagging for removal, the reasons why we're removing them. The city tree removal process is extensive for reviews and added public comment. So we want to make sure that we have all of our information, photos, and documentation for those permits when we submit them. So we just went through another walkthrough just to make sure we're very clear about what would be on the removals, what's pruning, what would be root pruning for trip hazards on our pathways, and how that coincides with our pathway repairs that we'll be doing. So we'll be getting more of that detailed information from the arborist here pretty soon. John and I met with an architect out at TSW, Tyrone S. Woods Park, Memorial Park, and we looked at a couple of concepts of more kind of refining the drainage issues that we're having and the high use area at the entry, and looking at some of the other areas that were areas of concerns with standing water. So we looked at a couple of concepts. They're going to refine some of the concepts based on our comments. They'll have proposed concepts as well as some estimates for the potential repairs so that we have associated costs to evaluate. And then I believe they would be looking to present that to PRAC. I'll have to see what the timing looks like for that. And then we can get it on the agenda item. And then one of the other bigger projects is the mausoleum roof replacement. We have the scope of work kind of finalized, and we're just waiting for some assistance on some legal terminology, we're looking to hopefully get these out for bid in the next couple of weeks so that we can get our bids in, evaluated, and then get on a schedule with the contractor that we do hire. And that's all I've got for you guys.
All right. Tim,
Hey,
has a hand up?
yes, thank you.
Question?
I do. Hey, Denise, could you clarify the river access trail? Is that only the asphalt, or does that go all the way through and around to the river with the trails through the woods?
We're talking about the river access trail being the concrete pathway that transitions into the asphalt, kind of at the end of it's kind of not quite at the end of the plant's fencing, and then goes to asphalt from that point across through the cove to Maine.
Yep. All right, great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
All right. Melissa?
Yeah, it's spring break, so it's been pretty busy. We've had a bunch of additional recreation swims and spring break camps and a lifeguard certification class. We've officially certified 5 additional staff members that will be onboarding throughout the next few weeks. All of our summer camp information is officially posted online and will be in the eTrail newsletter next week. And we will be offering day camps this summer, starting in June, going through the end of August for ages 3 to 12, as well as we just opened up applications for our junior camp counselor program that is for ages 13 to 17 for volunteer opportunities. All of our camps will open up for registration on May 13th. And we're accepting applications for scholarships up until May 2nd, so that we can ensure time of being able to alert people of that funding for the camps before registration opens. Movies in the park, voting closes on April 6th. And so far we have gotten 572 votes for that. So it's definitely been reaching a lot of people. And our concert and movie sponsorship is going very well. So far, we have raised $24,300 for sponsorship for our summer events. And I'm still working on gathering the last $2,850 to reach my goal. I'm looking for a band sponsor for July 28th for the concert series, a movie sponsor for August 12th for the movies, and then hoping to get 5 friends of the concerts and 5 friends of the movies as well. And then our Preserve Our Past Art and Poetry contest is still open, and so far we have received 5 submissions. The deadline for that is May 14th. Daddy Daughter Dinner Dance has officially opened for registration, and that's taking place on April 22nd. And we currently have under 40 spots left. So it is anticipating on filling as normal. And then we have 2 of our head lifeguards that are anticipating getting their lifeguard instructor certification next month, which will be really exciting because not only are we anticipating continuing to add more lifeguard certification opportunities, but we'll also look at adding in some first aid, CPR, AED training for the community, as well as some babysitting courses. And then we're in the process right now for recruitment for camp counselors this summer. So that's the next thing that we're recruiting for in the aquatic and recreation side of things. And that's the end of my updates.
Thanks, Melissa. We saved the best for last. Kathy?
Who? What? I have to wake up. Good evening, everybody. as Melissa mentioned, it's spring break, which is closure for the community center. We do a great deal of maintenance and cleaning, and staff do jobs outside their normal job descriptions. So this week we did a lot of wall repairs and paint touch-up, and that's throughout the facility, which was really fun this time because someone dropped paint on my head. So you get what you pay for. We have a bus driver that's been pressure washing for 4 days. He'll be pressure washing tomorrow. We've had a pretty significant moss problem around the facility that's been growing for years, and so it looks great. We'll have pictures of that in the monthly PRAC report next month. It's a significant difference. We've done garden cleanup for the vegetable and flower garden that we have. We clean all the hard surfaces, chairs and furniture, tables, everything in the facility, and sterilize all the exercise equipment. We're getting some estimates for some blinds in the fireside room because the blinds in there are at least 30 years old. And they're brittle, and we figured it's a good time to look at replacing those. Ann and Seth do minor maintenance, and they're replacing a floor in one of the staff offices, which was previously used as a pantry. So we are upgrading that floor so it's a little more easy to clean. Staff working with John and Denise, and Kendall's reviewed them. We've got 2 dead trees and 1 possible hazard tree that we're looking at having to mitigate. The hazard tree, the back side of the senior center has a ramp down to the basement, and the hazard tree is leaning over that access ramp and into the wires. So I think it's probably a priority that we're going to be looking at that. So we do all this, and we're continuing while we're closed and cleaning and painting to serve Meals on Wheels. This is the highest number of Meals on Wheels we've ever had at 130 clients, and that's delivery currently 2 days a week. And on April 4th, we'll be going back to hot meals 2 days a week with our frozen meal delivery, and serving hot meals in the congregate dining room 2 days a week as we transition. And we just frankly don't have enough volunteers to deliver meals any more than 2 days a week. We're finding it pretty difficult to recruit volunteers like we used to, which people would dedicate a certain amount of time and days and be pretty consistent. It's pretty inconsistent, and that's been a struggle for us. And that's pretty typical right now across all the senior centers in Clackamas County. We're starting to do summer programming and getting those trips for our seniors online, our classes and our hikes in order, and some of our events that we normally plan during the summer. We're also wrapping up our March for Meals campaign, which is an awareness campaign for senior hunger, and we accept donations to help support our meal program. And then our really sad news is that our recreation programmer, Jessica, who's been with us for 7 years and is amazing, has taken a really great opportunity. So she'll be leaving us in a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, I think. So we're going to miss her a lot, and we wish her great success. She's been fantastic. So she's going to leave a big hole for us, and that's kind of tough, but we wish her the best. So that's what I have. Brent, your hand.
Yep. Hey, Kathy, regarding the volunteer, the decline in volunteers, what are you looking for? What type of commitment does the center need?
Well, each day for Meals on Wheels, we have an average of 10 routes that need to be delivered. So if you have someone that commits to 3 routes a week and then goes on vacation, that's 3 routes we have to fill. And that's typically what we're seeing now is people sign up for a route and then they go on vacation, or some other commitment crops up. So we need people that are super flexible for fill-in, and that is what's really difficult. They want a route, but then they want that flexibility if they're traveling.
Right.
More active, more just volunteering right now, folks. It's not the commitment that we saw from the folks that were, 60 and 70 years old 20 years ago. It's just very different. So we're having, instead of 10 volunteers, we really need 10 volunteers and 10 backup volunteers.
Okay. Kathy, there's some real bad some type of feedback, I think, coming from your internet tonight. What consists of a route? Is it 1 stop, 10 stops? How long is a route?
My computer is failing, so this will be back to City Hall tomorrow. A route like our Beaver Creek route is really long, and it takes about 2 hours to drive it. Oregon City 1, which is our closest route, has about 10 stops, but they're close around the senior center. So it just depends. We've got 2 routes in West Lynn. They're pretty extensive.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Any other questions?
I just heard that Kendall was going to sponsor one of Melissa's bands, so I just wanted to throw that out there.
Yep, with Kathy's checkbook.
I heard Kendall was one of the bands.
Well, that concludes our update for the night. But something I like to end by saying is, as Kathy's alluded to, there are some needs for the department. Volunteers is one of them. I know when we did our tour of Hazel Grove Park, I was having some conversations with Troy and Steve about some of the issues that we're experiencing in our parks with vandalism, that we really could use some help advocating in these different neighborhoods to get these neighborhood associations to adopt these parks and to be more involved in helping us maintain these beautiful parks. Just recently, we had an incident at TSW where someone went through the park and graffitied the pathway and the benches, and it was pretty bad. It took several days for the Parks Department to clean it up, to then have someone come back through and do it again. So obviously we're doing our best in regards to trying to address those issues, but we really need the help of PRAC and the community to help us with some of these things that we're dealing with as a department. So when you're thinking about goals, start thinking about some of those items that we've discussed. We have more that we'd like to bring to the table, probably at the next meeting, that we can discuss with you about some of the needs and some of the things that we're facing right now. But just have that at the forefront of your mind. And also please review the city commission goals, because obviously those are things that we're working on right now, and anything you can do to help support us in achieving those goals and helping advocate for the Parks Department would be greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Kendall. Appreciate that. Member reports, if you want to show your hand, I'll call on you. That might be the best way to do that. But this is the time. If you notice on the agenda, we have future agenda items next. But for now, just the report. If you have something to report on that you've done or observed being done in the community, not really a time for discussion or questions. Just give a report and we'll move on. Brent, yes.
Yeah, it kind of ties in with what Kendall was saying. I've gone up to Newell Creek multiple times. I love the park. I've utilized the trails, the mountain bike trails and running trails. And I remember when Metro reported out to us that they would have a park ranger up there to keep things in line. I have not seen a park ranger, not one time there. And I'm noticing a lot of homeless activity up there. So it kind of ties into what Kendall was saying in terms of the vandalism. I know that Newell Creek falls under the metro realm of parks, but it's still something that I really am not happy to see. That's about it.
Hey,
Thank you, Brent. I'm sorry, Andy, do you have a report? Sorry.
No, I was just going to suggest to Brent, the best thing would be to do is to go to the Mill Creek Canyon grand opening, and they'll have all the Metro people there. They're the perfect people to actually to go there and actually talk to. So
Okay.
I recommend you to actually show up there on Saturday.
I'll be out of town.
Perfect. Thank you. Steve, you had your hand up. Do you have a report for us?
I did very quickly, just to kind of follow up on Kendall's report there with the record survey activity for Clackamat Park. It seems like for all the different groups, organizations I'm around right now, the interest in Clackamat Park or all things Clackamat Park is very, very high. And I'm certainly hearing input and certainly hearing support that the people believe the city is reaching out. The message is getting out there that they're interested in people's input. That's largely why you got so much, I think. But I think that is coming full circle and is a good thing for the city. There's a recognition that the city is interested and is trying to listen to what the public's thoughts are. So that's the kind of thing I'm hearing, and I think it's a positive thing. We need to keep that going into the future.
You're muted, Troy.
Yeah, you're muted, Troy.
Most people don't have a problem with that. They just let me go. It ends up better that way. So we'll go show of hands. Anybody that has a future agenda item that they would like to see. Anybody? Tim, please.
So I would like to have a discussion on the fees and cost reimbursement. I see that there's been it's been itemized for the pool and recreation shelters and the Pioneer Center, but the sports fields and who is to pay for these things has not really been spelt out really clearly, Kendall. It says $10 R or NR, and it's those R and NRs are not clarified what they are. There's no legend on that.
Resident, non-resident.
All right. Okay.
So Tim, when we've got the cost recovery report coming up in July, do you want to be able to have that included? And are you just, I mean, is it sufficient to you to ask them to include that information at that time, or do you want an agenda item sooner than that for us as PrAC to discuss?
Actually, for PrAC to discuss, because here, if a soccer team, a 5-year-old soccer team goes and plays, and not everybody is really well off for those soccer teams, and it's another $10 a game, and they play every weekend for 6 weeks. That's $60 spread throughout that team and adds to the cost of that. So it's like, all right, where does this end? And I just
and we are not, as PrAC, we're not in a position to make any decisions on fees. So anything we discuss, we can't vote on what they should be or shouldn't be or anything.
Mm-hmm.
So
Oh, you muted yourself again, Troy.
if you want to put it on the agenda, I'm fine with that. I just want to be clear that there will be no decision made for anything you want to discuss, because we are not in a position to make that decision.
And may I make a recommendation, Tim? I know what we're discussing. I think you and I and John actually need to have a discussion about how this affects pickleball and how we're going to move forward with your particular group. Because I think for the past year, we've incorporated PrAC and the community to get input on our sustainability plan. Now this is policy. This is set by the city commission. We're not going back. So what I like to do is just have a conversation with you offline so we can figure this out together. And I think that that would benefit us moving forward.
Sure, I could see that. That'd be great, Kendall. I would appreciate that.
Would that satisfy your request for the agenda item, Tim?
Yeah, and it's more transparency for the entire city and all the teams that are affected by an increased cost. So really, it's more of a city council issue and it's something that PrAC has very little input on. So
okay, so you can do that offline meeting, and then Kendall, is it fair to assume that in the report in July that fees will be discussed or shared or some sort of, not discussion, but at least mentioned in there?
My confusion is the fact that we've discussed fees for over a year and included PrAC in that conversation. So before we got to this point to make it policy, we got a letter of recommendation from PrAC as a group that you all were ready to move forward. The master fee schedule was approved. So there was a consensus by this group, and then we took it to city commission. So I don't know what else we need to discuss.
Well, and I probably shouldn't have said discuss, more of, for Tim's point of transparency, when that report is given to us in July, will it include some sort of, here are the fees, here's what it, just information only?
Right, and we have shared that information with the group, and that's readily available, and we can include it in our monthly staff report. But yes, we've been transparent with all of our fees and how we're going to move forward in our communication plan. So I would be happy to share it again, though.
Okay.
Nope, perfectly fine.
It sounds like we're on that train that Jacob described earlier to us this evening.
Fair enough. Okay, Karen, you had a future agenda item.
I did, and I also want to commend Kendall for being quite diplomatic in your phrasing. You're right. We have seen this, the fees as a work in progress, and we knew they were coming. I know how hard Rochelle worked on them, as well as other people in the department. And yes, this is a move forward from here, adjust to the new rules. So my future agenda item, it's kind of bouncing off of something that Jonathan said. I think we should ask the Oregon City Parks Foundation to make a 15-minute presentation at the opening of one of our meetings. I don't think many of us, maybe other than myself, are aware that they even exist. And they're doing ivy pools at Waterboard Park. They've done native plantings and pollinator plantings along the promenade that Jonathan was mentioning. It's not just the McLaughlin Neighborhood Association. Part of this is the Parks Foundation, and they are a 501c3 that, when the rest of us are trying to get grants, will allow us to work with them to apply for grants that require a 501c3. Because being a city department, we can't qualify for grants that need that kind of a match. And they have been very helpful to me at the cemetery, getting matching grants. So it might be nice to invite them to introduce themselves and tell us what it is that they do for the parks. And
you're muted again, Troy.
Oh my goodness. Keeping me quiet that often and that long is not easy, but I do it to myself. So Karen, you requested an agenda item there. When would you like to receive that report? When do you think is a good time for what you want?
I was to say, no rush as we go through agendas. If we've got, time for a presentation to invite them.
So we did invite them to this meeting and they couldn't make it. That was something that we were working on.
Oh, okay.
And so we are having conversations with them about scheduling a time for them to come and present to PrAC.
Okay,
Perfect.
because, yeah, I think it would be a nice idea for everyone to be aware of what they're doing for us. And where to turn their cans in.
Ken, you have a future agenda item for us.
Yeah, I kind of wanted to circle back on the tour, the park tour, and I was just wondering if, I'm assuming that the consultant that gets hired for the master plan is going to be going on an all-day tour. Is that something that the committee could attend at that time instead of trying to schedule all of these different ones, or is that, or is there a way that we could participate in that tour with the consultants? It just seems like that'd be a good time because you're going to be, we'll be there. I'm assuming it'll be at least an all-day tour. Is that possible?
What I can do once we identify the schedule and when those things are going to happen, circle back with all of you to see if there's any opportunities for you to meet with the consultants and participate in the tours. In regards to the tours that we were planning for PrAC, we were looking to do a tour of several parks, utilizing our transportation to take you to the different parks and showcase some of our more popular parks as a group, and looking to do that sometime in the summer. So that's still part of the plan, but if anyone would like for that to change, we can change that.
Okay. And then I had a question. Do we actually have to sign up to help plant trees on Saturday the 2nd, or can we just show up?
You have to get your hands dirty.
Okay, fair enough. But can we show up and just, I mean, we don't need to go through the whole registration process, or can we just drop in?
And I'm pretty sure you can, and I can get some more information about that, but I'm sure that's not going to be a problem.
Okay.
Yeah. Ken, Friends of the Trees are still going to want some information from you because that's how they get their grant money.
But you know,
they're not going to turn away two hands.
It's hard with the witness protection program to
Oh
do
no,
all of
that's
that,
my
so.
line. You can't use my line.
Okay, and then finally, Troy, I did have one more, and I would be interested in possibly discussing either park design standards or guidelines, and how park development goals kind of work within the planning commission's standards that maybe don't seem to always get passed through to the Parks Department until it's a little bit too late.
Oh, yes. Amen.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay.
Justin, you got that down? Any question, Justin, on what he's requesting?
No, I got it.
Okay, perfect. Ken, any other agenda
Nope.
items?
I will shut up.
And then I know we talked about it tonight, but just to make sure we don't forget, agenda item for next month would be the goals.
Yep.
The couple of goals that specifically are coming that we amended to move to April, separate from the goals discussion itself, because we need to discuss those two pieces and then the goals as a whole, a separate item. So, well, bylaws require that we are done by 10 p.m. It is currently 9:49, and we are adjourned. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Thanks,
guys.